Morning everyone, welcome to Our Small Footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. Today's video is a kitchen video again. I made a big batch of Bolognese that I'm going to turn into a few different dishes. So today I turned part of it into lasagna, some dairy-free lasagna and some dairy-full lasagna because I really like dairy but nobody else does. And I have put aside, so I'm going to make some lasagna soup out of it later on before the next shopping trip. So the next shopping trip's next week. So at the moment I'm trying really hard to get through some of the stuff that's in the fridge and freezer, make space and assess and inventory what I've got and use it up. So this was some frozen mince from the quarter of a cow that we bought, so I needed to get it used. So I pulled it out of the freezer and used that to make this big batch of Bolognese. And then I'm going to turn it into a few meals for everyone to eat over the next week or so. Yes, lasagna, sourdough pasta in the lasagna and things like that. So I've shared that for you to have a look at. I also got approved for a Amazon storefront the other day, so I'm going to set that up and I'll put the link in the description box for you to have a look. It might make it easier. Some of those things that I try and link to and the links don't always work, the storefront might work a little bit easier. It's American based. I'm not sure how that works with Australia. The Australians don't have storefronts, but they have the links, so we'll figure it out together as we go along. So I'll put the link in the thing anyway, and link to those few things that everyone asks about. I think that Amazon sells Thermomixes in America or Canada too, so maybe if anyone in America was thinking about them, I've had a few people ask me if I can sell them in other countries and I can't, so only in New Zealand. So I might put a link to one of them there and see if that works for commission basis, or I don't know how it works, but we'll give it a go. It's just another thing to more work for me to do, but you know, that's the way it goes. So enjoy the video today, and I will see you again in the next couple of days. We're working on the garden still. I'm still planning my trip. We did the potato beds that I have to share, and I'm still working on seedlings. We had a little bit of an incident yesterday. If you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen that one of the kids dropped an entire tray of tomato seedlings, so I had to pot them up and hopefully they survive, but they're now mixed, so I have no idea which tomatoes are what, and that's going to be interesting when we plant it, but that's, you know, when you have kids helping, that's what happens. He stubbed his toe. That's how he dropped it. I did suggest that if he was wearing shoes, then maybe it wouldn't have been an issue, but who listens to mum? So I will see you again in the next few days. I've got a whole bunch of stuff that I haven't finished editing and putting up, so I will be sure to get it up for you guys. And then I have to do the shopping trip. So I only have 3 shopping trips until Christmas. So this one, and then one in mid-November, one mid-December. So I have to start prepping for Christmas this one, and I've got the car booked into the mechanics while I'm down there this time, so I've got a whole day spent at a shopping centre while the car is in the mechanics, so I'm going to try and get some stuff done then too. So I will share what I can, and otherwise I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for your support too. The Thermomix, my 60 days ends tonight at midnight, and I managed to sell 5 of my 6, and I'm super grateful for everyone who purchased one, and it's a bummer I couldn't get that 6th one, but I will manage. So thanks everyone, and I'll see you again probably tomorrow. Alrighty, we started out with Bolognese, so we're using up stuff out of the fridge, as I said, out of the freezers and stuff. So I decided to make a big batch of Bolognese, and then I'll use it in multiple different dishes. So I started out doing that. I use my Thermomix to mince up all my vegetables because I find that the kids prefer it if the vegetables are in smaller pieces, which is fine. It still adds the flavour that we want. So I use the Thermomix and I just mince up each of the vegetables. I tend to use onion, garlic, carrot, celery, mushroom if I've got it. I quite often mince up some bacon as well. I only have 1 kilo of bacon left for the rest of this 6-week period though, so I wasn't using it in the Bolognese. Any veggies that I've got surplus I will throw in there. Zucchini, some squashes sometimes depending on what's there, any sort of greens, anything like that. I mix it all up and in the Thermomix so that it's all just sort of a amalgamated sort of a minced vegetable mixture, and then we cook it off in a pot with some fat. So I think I used a bit of lard in the bottom here, and I'm using my buffalo canning pot because it's a really nice big pot. It's a 30 litre pot and it's stainless steel, so using the high acid food and it's not going to be an issue. So I put all the vegetables in there with a bit of fat and cooked it off. I didn't have any fresh zucchini, but I did find some in the freezer. So I put a big bag of shredded zucchini that I had put in the freezer in as well. It was a bit frozen, so it took a while to break down, but it did eventually. So then we cooked all that off until it was soft and looked good to me. And then added the mince. Now I had to go out and help with the potato bed, so Surreal added the mince for me and broke it all up while it was cooking. So we add all the mince and we cook all the mince off until it's mostly cooked, because you want to break it up, so it's a lot easier to break it up before the sauce is in there. So when it's just the veggies and the mince, there's plenty of liquid from the veggies, and it's easier to break that mince up into the smaller pieces. I don't mind the chunks in there, but it goes further if it's minced up finer. So we tend to mince it up nice and fine. So we added that to the veggies, and Surreal sat doing her schoolwork on her laptop at the kitchen so that she could keep rotating that for me while it was cooking. Once all the mince and the veggies are cooked off to my liking, whichever, or your liking, however it is that you choose to do them, then I add tomato products. So I added a couple of jars of roasted tomato from my canning. So this is tomatoes that I had roasted and just put in jars as is, nothing else, for storing on the shelf and using later. I added a couple of jars of those. I also added a jar of mushroom stock. So this was mushrooms that I had canned in chicken stock and put on the shelf. So you cook the mushrooms off in the stock in a pot, and then you fill the jars. So if I have fresh mushrooms, I use mushrooms in my bolognese, but because I don't always have fresh mushrooms, I thought I would can some in stock to use for instances like this. So I poured a jar of the mushroom stock in, and then I add passata and tomato paste. So we're going for lasagna consistency mince, so we want it nice and thick. So I only added 2 jars of passata, and then I used a little bit of water in those as well to make sure that I got everything out, and a whole jar of tomato paste as well to help with thickening it up but keeping it nice and rich in tomato. I did add some chicken stock, so I made this stock the day before and put it in the fridge. So I used my chicken stock in there as well, but not huge amounts, just enough to create some liquid, because what we add to our bolognese as well is we add pearl barley. Now you can use any sort of a grain you want here. You could use a lentil, which are protein, no carbs, which is good for some people. We really like the texture of pearl barley in our bolognese. We find that the pearl barley has a very similar texture to mince once it's cooked. It's kind of got a nutty flavour, and the texture of it is a little bit like just chewing pieces of mince. So pearl barley is my preferred option. It is a carb though, it is a grain, so we could use lentils like we use in our dal and things like that, and I might give it a go. I've never been a huge fan of red lentils in my bolognese, which is something that a lot of people use, but maybe the chana dal or the yellow split peas that we use for our dal might work, because we like it in dal, so you'd sort of think that we'd be able to like it in the bolognese. But the pearl barley is what I've always used. The kids are happy to eat it, so changing it is not big on my ideas, and we don't have any issues with having carbs here. Like, we eat a well-balanced diet, nobody has any issues with blood sugars or anything like that, so I don't mind adding those carbs in there, to be honest. But we might try a few different things. I also added a bunch of seasonings, which is to taste. So I always add a good slug of Worcestershire sauce. I use smoked paprika, salt and pepper, some Italian herbs if I've got them, or some thyme and rosemary, or just some sort of a green herb. If I've got fresh stuff in the garden, I'll use fresh. If not, I use dried. And then I added some of my chicken stock paste. So I really like my bolognese to have quite a depth of flavour, like that whole umami thing, the depth of, so you don't want just the high notes of the tomato, you want some lower notes as well. So I really like using bouillon. So I have my chicken stock paste that I made the other day, there's a video on that, and I used that as part of my seasonings as well. And then you just want to simmer it till the barley's cooked, basically. So you want to make sure that the barley doesn't have that hard kernel in the middle. You want it nice and chewy. So that's why I put the excess stock in there, because this bolognese looks like it has a whole lot of liquid, but once the barley is cooked through, it'll swell, suck up the liquid, and it'll be quite thick. So I wanted it thick because I'm using it for lasagna first up, so we didn't add any more liquid. We just simmered it until it was nice and thick and the barley was soft and things like that, and then put it aside to cool. I made pasta sheets for my lasagna, so I made sourdough pasta sheets just because I could. I had starter there to go, so I use my Thermomix. You can use a food processor or anything like that to mix the dough up. I use 400 grams of flour with 3 eggs, 100 grams of starter and a drizzle of oil, and then I just pulse it in the Thermomix. So it's like food processor style. You just want to bring all of it together. It doesn't come into a dough ball. You don't want that, especially not with sourdough pasta, because you want the pasta to start out a little bit dry, because as the sourdough ferments, as the starter ferments through the dough, it'll hydrate the flour a bit more. So you want to start off a little bit drier than you'd expect, to be honest. So you want to bring it together into these little balls, and then you pour it out onto your mat, your dough mat. And when it's on your dough mat, then you bring it all together into an actual ball. Once it's brought together into the ball, you want to wrap it in something to keep it moist. I used cling wrap. I have this big roll of cling wrap that I bought that I still have to finish using, so that's what I'm doing at the moment. But you can use beeswax wrap or probably a damp tea towel over a bowl, anything like that, just something to keep the moisture in. And put it aside. What else was I doing? I had to make the cheese sauce. So for the kids, we obviously don't have dairy, so I made a dairy-free bechamel sauce for them. I used coconut cream, which I then topped up to the right quantity with water. I buy tins of coconut cream, not coconut milk, because they're the same price and one is diluted and one isn't. So if I need to dilute it, then I dilute it myself. So a whole tin of coconut cream and then topped up with a bit of water. I think I need 500 grams in total. Some corn flour, I think it's about 40 grams of corn flour, a quarter cup of nutritional yeast, some salt and some mustard powder. It gets all thrown into the Thermomix and it gets turned on and it does its thing and turns it into white sauce. So I threw all that into the Thermomix and then put the Thermomix aside while it was making it, and used that time to roll out my pasta. So I have a KitchenAid pasta attachment that I use, and all I did was my standard pasta. The pasta is quite soft because it's sourdough pasta, and normally I would put it in the fridge overnight and then make it the next day, but I'm doing this all in one day, so it's quite soft, so you just have to be careful because it will tear. I use a rolling pin and I just roll it into sort of an oval before I try to feed it through the roller and then I take it down. So I start at 8, which is the thickest, and I work it down to about a 2 for lasagna sheets. You don't want to take it to the 1 because they tear when you're trying to spread mince and stuff out, and especially if you mince and that is cold. So I take it down to 1. The sheets for my cast iron pans is around about a half of the dough mat, so that's sort of what I cut it to, but it's going to shrink a little, so just do what you can. I don't have a problem if there's little bits overlaid. My kids really don't care. So I just did the layering. I did a little bit of mince in the bottom, pasta, mince, cheese sauce, pasta, mince, cheese sauce, pasta, all the way through, and I always try and end the dish with cheese sauce on the top because that goes nice and brown and bubbly when you're cooking it. And even this dairy free tends to go brown and bubbly, just not quite stringy and chewy like cheese does. So I like to stop it off with that. I have been known to put some sourdough breadcrumbs or something on top of it to give it that sort of a crunch that cheese would, like melty roasty cheese would. I didn't have any made up today, so I didn't do that, but it does work, or even some sesame seeds or something to give it a little bit of that texture on the top. I also made a cheese sauce because I made a smaller lasagna for myself as well that I can then put portions in the freezer so I can eat it at other times when I'm making the kids' favourites and I don't necessarily want to eat them, which isn't very often, but it's nice to have it there. So I did the same thing as the plant-based one in the Thermomix, except that I used the Thermomix to grate the cheese first. So I store cheese in the freezer because I'm the only one who eats it and I only eat small amounts per month. So I put it in the Thermomix to grind it all up, and then I added all the liquid as the same as the other one. It's around about 500 grams of, I used milk because I had some. I would use coconut cream if I didn't. Some corn flour, cornstarch, and salt, mustard powder, any sort of flavorings that you like in your cheese sauce. You can use nutmeg and stuff as well. I quite like smoked paprika in just about anything I eat. So I did that, and then just put it in and put it on the same as the plant-based cheese sauce. You just throw it all in, turn it on, and the sensors in the bowl and the blades assess the temperature and the viscosity as it's cooking, and when it's done it just chimes and tells you it's done. So I did that and put mine together as well. You don't need to see me put another one together. This is what the lasagna looked like when it was cooked. Now, lasagna is supposed to sit. It's supposed to set. It's even better if it gets chilled and then rewarmed, to be honest, with the whole texture wise, but my children were starving apparently, because they're always starving. So instead it's served up warm, which means that it ends up on the plate a little bit like slop, but you know, it tastes good. So I served it up and went, oh well, I may as well have just made spaghetti bolognese, to be honest, but here is your lasagna, and they thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you again for joining me today, and I will see you again on the next video. Thanks, guys.